So, good evening, and how is everyone doing tonight? Perfect. Good, good. So, one thing we said, Philip, was that you should show a few things. Are you ready to do that?
Yes.
Good. You want to take the show?
I can do that. So I've been working on one of Lars' old builds. It's the one to the right, and the one I've been working on is to the left. And it's basically a worker/manager application where a worker can put in their time that they've been working on versus the manager can see how they're working and so forth. So I've been mainly working with the placing containers to update the design and make a few small improvements overall. So as you can see straight away, we've managed to make it a more pleasant look on the start screen with the icon and the text and the buttons for this. So the register time is now called time card because it acts more like it. And straight away you can see a very big difference because there's almost no text or anything here. That's because it's stored in here. So all of this is now from here. And what we've also done is add the time management buttons into each of the assignments that you do. So I can change around and not be specific to these. And so forth.
Good.
And another big thing that we've managed to work with is the report, where you see your monthly report, how you've done throughout the whole month. And it now looks more like this. So there are buttons instead. So some are per assignment, some are salary. Normally these will have a lot of things like I have maybe 10 different assignments. I've done so many hours. And now we use placing.
It doesn't have any, but it was tables. Summary per assignment, table for each.
Yeah, and you can see you have to scroll sideways to see all of the information. So now what we've done is we've made it so that they can be presented in a more easy way with all of the information, and also hide the information that isn't showing. So if there's nothing there, it's not showing up. And the same goes for salary and travel expenses. And these buttons here are no, I can't do this here.
Just register one time and you can do it. You go back and just
register. They are here in on the left ones. So these actions that are in here are now on each of these. And there are, so when you click on this one, you will only affect that date and so forth. And the same goes for time entries and so forth. So that's what we've been working on mainly, and we also updated the dashboard and stuff. And all of this I've been working in with placing containers mainly to solve and do.
Very good. So how did you find it? It was hard to get started, or?
It was hard to understand the logic behind placing containers isn't that easy to get into, but once you start to understand, oh, I need to do this, I need to have this kind of structure, it slowly becomes more easier to work with it, and so forth. So it was slow start, but then I picked up speed, I would say, because it gets more intuitive when you work on it.
Okay, very good. Lars, do you have any comments to the changes?
Now I've seen it a few times, but I mean the goal here is to make it mobile friendly, and also well, that's a primary thing, and also not so boring. I think the register page is the one that has well, they've gained in different ways. It's much less to look at maybe on the register page, which is good, and that we can repeat buttons now instead of having the left menu. I think the summary page is the content under each button I like, but I think also that Alex will agree with me that these buttons are a bit too
big.
And we talked about that, Philip. They are too strong, and then you don't see underneath. So I think it's more easy for people maybe to see this as something that is, you know, you have this button to fold up or fold down things. Now it's not, to me, it feels like buttons that maybe should take me somewhere else, but it just shows stuff.
Yeah, it's well, I agree that these buttons they kind of have, of course, the same priority, but it feels like they're like all have like a high alerted priority sort of, because they have this bright color and stuff, and you can kind of like don't know what to look at first. So yeah, it's a good way that you presented it, like kind of like as an accordion, that where you like fold out by clicking on the button. But I would suggest to make that not as a button, but sort of like as we did it for the Migo index. That it's kind of like an accordion with a little bit of this kind of like a plus icon, or like arrow down icon that would show you that something will gonna unfold. Like it's gonna be like a drop down for you with more information. Because it feels like right now it feels like your regular menu on the first page that you're using with all of that buttons. Yeah, but it's good that you managed to make them kind of like unfoldable. And yeah, the color background, it can be like that, but it should be on like a call to action color that would be like one of the that will be on the action that will be one of the highest priority on the page. So yeah, it's a good way to structure a data like this on the page, but yeah, a little bit more of kind of user experience comment from me here. Yeah.
Go easy on the color. Especially the red ones. Very good.
This page is for them to, you bring this up at the beginning of the next month, or the end of the month. So this is like you register during the month. They come in, they log in, and they get the page for today, and they say I worked 1 hour today or 2 hours today, and then they just go somewhere else to Instagram, I guess, or whatever that is, TikTok. And then at the end of the month, they will get a notification. In the beginning of the next month, they will have a notification that says, hey, you need to sign off of the last month. And they see this page, and they need to scroll through, see is it correct, and then they're going to push this button at the bottom, send to review. So more like we have it in Rock, maybe, like a button at the end, and when you press it, it turns green to say I've sent it. That would be the good thing here, and trying to make like a summary first, which is good, we have there, and then these, if you need to act on any of these, then you fold them out, but if you don't need to fold them out, you just press send to review. So that's the use case.
Good, but it's easier, or we have been given the possibility to control the screen area much better with the placing containers, and that shows here. So that was the main challenge for you to get used to. And then, of course, design is a science of its own, and it's good to have these discussions on what how to signal where the user should go, and also working with the visibility to hide stuff that isn't needed at the moment is good, but maybe even more to be able to signal with color that this section will have data, so you need to go in here, but this doesn't, so you don't have to go in unless you want to add something on your own. Good.
And this the other page, Philip, is the one that you have troubles with, that we talked about this Monday with the drop downs. I don't know if you have you got some example, I think, from Dennis, Hans.
No, I haven't seen any example.
Well, it's this page, and problem we had was that it goes away, and here it stays on the old page.
So that was what I wanted to check. So how, because Dennis thinks he had sent something to you, Hans, but maybe it's lost in translation.
No, I didn't say anything, but I'm just mentioning, trying to explain during Monday's meeting what is happening, I guess, because I had a look into the server code.
Just quickly bring up the view model for this one to see this combo box, to see how it's assigned.
So it's, let's see, it's these two.
Okay, might be two.
Assignment is the object, and then the pick list, picks one of the assignments, and then it's just a presentation of string. So it's like the standard behavior. Maybe it's because it's in a sub, it's in a list, something like it. But I think we have done this so many times before, so I don't really get it.
Yeah, so I don't see anything obviously different than the test case that I did. So I'm not sure. Okay.
Let me, I will create a small example.
Yeah, that would be good to so that I can debug what happens.
Yeah, okay, yeah, I will do.
Good. Right. I will share my screen, then we will switch the topic a bit. To something else. Oh, where am I now? Let's see. Is it my screen now?
Yeah.
Good. So, one thing that we're switching topics. One thing that we have talked about is the need to override the account register, account login, and account manage. And from time to time you want to do that to get better control of collecting the data from a user to be, or showing logging in user something different depending on where they came from or who they are. And the old strategy or the existing strategy, the built-in strategy is MVC pages that sort of are harder to work with, and there's only one. And then we did one sort of override mechanism that forced you to replace with view overrides. So what we have changed it to now is once you're in live edit, you can go to the assets TK sync tab, and you can find this example MDriven mergeable, and then you can merge in this account view override. And once you have that, you will get a few view models, and these names are important then because they have meaning to MDriven Turnkey: account register, and account manage, and account login. So how this will work when running the application is to so now we're not logged in, and if we choose to register, we get to this account register page instead, which is a normal view model page that you control yourself, and here you can add additional info and control styles, etc. So this is just an example style that I've applied in the background, and I think I've used placing containers to center everything here. Count register, it's column, and this is a small screen, but looks something like this. And of course here I'm free to add additional data that I want to catch prior to knowing that this is going to be a user, and that will only probably be stored in this session because I don't know who the user is as of yet because he hasn't registered. So let's say that I'm a new user. I'm calling myself B. And pushing the register link, because what this does is posting this or rather redirecting to the account controller. And okay, now I got an error because I was something that so I'm gonna register that. So now I'm logged in with the B user, and if I press the B user, I come to the account manage, which also is easily overridden with an Angular page like this. So here's a list of all the users, and then this is pointing out that this is me. Before we could do the override, but this is easier still with just following the name pattern, account manage, and this must be yeah, let's see how this is given a account manage. This must use the sys singleton login to actually access the user. It can't be rooted because well, of different reasons. So this from this, for security reasons, you should do it like this to have the sys singleton or CL singleton current user to access the actual logged in user. So there will be no confusion or easy way to just type in an identity here to get access to another user if you forget to give it an access group, etc. And if I log out and try to log in as this user, that works the same way. So this is yet another page, account login, and then we're logged in. So that might be a thing to try on a production case to get control over the account login. And of course we can combine this with the other functionalities with some sort of periodic action that moves the user even further away to even more specific page if that is what we need, depending on what we know about the user. So there's nothing special about these pages as such. They are normal pages. It's just naming that they will be called upon first. But then you can just look at the pages to see how to manage login from really anywhere. So if we were to look at the login, the actual important URL to navigate to is this one. Try login with password, and then we need to set these values on the sysingleton. These are new transient login request username and transient login request password. So this is the way that we pass on the data from this login page to this controller to actually perform the login. And all these things come from the merge pattern. So everything should work pretty easy out of the box, and you can use these and change them any way you see fit. The reason
Hans? Yeah, is there a way to if you for example, as I've done, you have like a ticket, like a reset password ticket thing. You have a long code and you look that user up. Is there a way that you can just set the user as logged in? You can do whatever login feature you would want to. Just say, hey, log in this sys user.
Yeah, let's see. It should be doable, but I'm not sure that we. So the trick is not to expose that anywhere. It must be something that's only possible server side by code, because. So.
Yeah, I meant like, for example, here, account try login with password, like login with the GUID, or and then you send the singleton something. I'm just saying, because then if you have this way of sending out, because a lot of applications do these cool, things like they send you an email with a code instead of you having even to type anything. You just say your email. And they send something like a magic link.
Yeah, and it won't be any problem for us to add it, but I don't think that I have a word for it now. Probably we'll need to do something on self VM as login, a specific user, because what we will need to do is to instruct our account controller to store a cookie with a username, and we can't have that as an URL easily accessible, because then anyone could reverse engineer it. So we need to have it as a private thing, server side only. So that's
so it's not like we could have like this transient login GUID here.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm just saying. Otherwise, I'm doing the wave here if no one notices, but I am inside because this is, things we've been talking about for many years, and you have really done a lot of work in all these like login scenarios with all these things. So I have to say that first. But then when I see this, it's like, ooh, then maybe I can add this cool magic link login too.
Yeah, that's a good extension to this then. So we're gonna add that to the list. I don't think there's too much hassle with that.
Because you need to go to a page. So if you kind of end up at the login page, but instead of having basically password and username and password, you would have the login cookie or something, and then you set that, and and the login would run. Yeah, but continue if you have other things. It's just that you get excited when you see all these possibilities, because I already have a lot of things that I can imagine this could be used for.
Yeah, good. No, I don't have any a lot of other things to discuss really. There are minor things that we can test out, to minor improvements that has been done. There's a lot of those, but if there's anything else that we want to discuss, it could be a good opportunity to do so now. So one of the things that has been a bother for many, and for me as well, is, let's see if this works now. So this is, I haven't rehearsed this, so I'm not sure. When you're doing action expressions, and we get we have multiple expressions in one action. So this doesn't do anything. This is just for example. When we use the semicolon to separate between actions, before leaving it like this, we got a syntax error only, and that was hard to understand. So now the error message has been updated to saying that semicolon is a separator between expressions. Don't use as a termination of expression. So I think that is much better to understand why you shouldn't have it on the last row. And actually I tried to extend the parser to allow it on the last row, but this is deep down in the parser, and wasn't worth the bother. So skip that. I just changed the error message instead. And of course, another common mistake is if this isn't an action but you think it is an action. So that you do something like self dot is admin assign true. Okay, that didn't make it to the demo, but this has been, the error message should have been updated to say that this isn't recognized. Did you mean to use an action instead? Because that's also a common thing, especially in the debugger, that you think you're in an action and you don't understand why nothing works. But that wasn't available here because that's a later build, I think.
When we're in the OCL and action editor here, and two things. One is there haven't been a good way to parse dates without, if the date is invalid, you get an exception and too much fail. So I added, but I don't think maybe it's not in the right place. So if you just take a string, like to make a string, and then you do dot try parse. I don't know if it got into your... No, I don't. Okay, yeah, you don't have updated stuff since yesterday, I think. But so that there the question is maybe, I don't know how to place an operator maybe on the type instead. So maybe you should do like datetime.try parse as in C#. So that, but then that highlighted another problem, you could say, that sometimes now, or all the times, if you have something that creates a C# exception in the framework, there is no great way to handle it. And I don't know, I mean, I'm not saying that we should come up with an answer to that now at all, but yeah, it would be nice if it could fail better than it is today, I think.
Yeah, so the idea with the OCL is that it should fail silently, but that makes it hard to find the issues. So everything with these, we don't have to null check everything, we just run through long expressions, and that's how math normally works. If you multiply with 0 somewhere, it's 0 all over. You don't have to check for that. And OCL will is pre-checking for you. But of course, when we have these exceptions that we actually want to react to, it might be hard to understand where a long expression fails. And I've also been thinking about that, if we should have a pattern or something to collect these random or rule breaks.
Yeah, and you get them in the log, which is nice. But then I'm also thinking maybe in some circumstances, maybe the expression should return null, like empty. So at least the whole page don't fail.
Yeah, and that's actually the goal, that we should catch the exception so it doesn't break. And it especially shouldn't break, because if it breaks, even if it breaks silently, it fails to put the subscriptions, etc. So next time when the data is updated, it doesn't work. So that's important that we actually gracefully handle it. And we have had a few examples like that when we do like substring on minus or higher than the string length, and then things broke silently, and that wasn't good. So that's handled, but there might be issues still that we haven't
yeah, because then I can also put that, because in this case the parse function, it would be better actually if the normal parse would eat the exception, put it in the log, but return a null.
Yeah,
because then at least it would be more reasonable, because you don't want the whole page to stop render, and then you can't get out.
Definitely not. Yes.
So then that's a better solution. I can remove try parse and have parse, because in OCL and action language, like we always have try. It's like it's like
it's implicit try. Yeah, good. Let's see if we have other stuff.
How are you doing, Damien? I see a lot of emails going to you. We can't hear you.
No, you're muted.
If Damon is trying to speak.
Sorry. It's been going really well. I've been working on my model conversion from ECO3 to MDriven. Hans and I looked at it, I don't know, maybe a year ago, and we did a mock run. And so I used our data from that to do the real run. I did the actual conversion a couple of weeks ago, or maybe a week ago. And so now I'm just moving all of my all my code, my method code, and my triggers for has user code stuff like that. And I'm about, if I count by classes, I'm about a third the way through it. So it's pretty impressive. Hans and I have to work on what I do once it's done, because then I'm going to need a test environment to start playing with it. But it's translating really well. There's a lot of OCL, for derived attributes and stuff, and that's just boom, it's there, it's done, it's good. I have to add constructors for every class because that's the way we did it back in the day, but it's actually kind of useful because then I know if a class is converted if I've added a constructor, and it's not converted if I haven't. But anyway, it's going really well. It'll be interesting to see where it goes next, but I expect the model will be done in the next month or two, the pace I'm going.
Good to hear. So you had a question maybe about how to find everything with a constructor?
Yeah, don't worry about that. I came up with a different answer to that.
Yeah.
Don't worry about that.
Good.
Yep. Yeah, what'll be interesting is once it's done, wiring it into WinForms and or, starting to build some view models, because UI is next.
Mm.
And that was my next question. That's when. Have you tried adding some view models just to see that you can start it or something?
No, and I need to get to that point. I need to decide what ecospace to use and what database to wire it up to. Hans has legacy ECO mapping options available for attributes, and so I'm going to have to turn that on wherever I need to turn that on, and hopefully I can just point it on my development machine to the database that's sitting here as a test. But obviously long term that needs to go into turnkey, I'm assuming, so that it can be accessible anywhere, but that's a different problem.
Yes. Okay. Yeah, I see Hans and you talk through. I get copies of some of the emails. So yeah, I just hope it works out. It feels forward moving all the time, so you don't hit a total brick wall. And
No, the brick wall was actually converting the model structure. Like I said, Hans and I did a mock of it maybe about a year ago, and then a couple of weeks ago I dedicated myself to, okay, this is it. We're doing the full move, and I'm leaving the old tools behind and the old code base behind. And it took me, I don't know, a day or two to get it, the model structure converted, but it all worked and it looks good. So yeah, I don't foresee any brick walls. I'm sure there'll be some slowdown points. U models is probably one of them. And or, what I'm kind of thinking, if it's easy enough to do, is I'll just wire the new model into the old interface, and then I've got a running application where the model is running in MDriven as opposed to ECO3 like it is currently. I'm assuming that's going to give me some performance improvements and just generally modernize, because ECO3 is .NET 1.1, right? Like, it's old.
Mm. Yeah.
I just have a question, Damon, if I may.
Sure.
Well, what is it that you're working on? I mean, what is it is based where you do? Because I haven't really seen it.
The business problem that you're solving, I mean.
Oh, yeah. So our application is a management platform for running an independent auto shop.
Mm-hmm.
And so it's all of the, the client management, the bookkeeping and accounting, the pricing, the staff management, workflow. I've got just under 260 classes in my model. It's not, I don't know if that's big or small by your standards. By my standards, it's pretty big.
Yeah, it's big for me.
Yeah. So, and I started it back in 2006 when ECO3 came out as part of Borland's development platform. I did that because it was really the go-to tool to do model-driven development way back then with UML. So that's, and I'm really fortunate because this is going to allow a Windows code base to get reinvented into the web world. And I don't know that that's necessarily an easy path.
Is it only for auto shops? Because what I've heard and so forth, I mean, you could kind of turn it into whatever, right? I mean, you could turn it into, like, for instance, let's say a school needs a proper management tool for the students, teachers, and so forth. Or am I thinking way ahead?
Yeah, I don't know if that would be an easy tweak. I do think any kind of service business that sells parts and labor, basically time and materials, any kind of service business like that would be easily adapted.
But this is sort of the philosophical question, because everyone that does model-driven development sort of goes really, really close to the business, and as such gets tailored to one specific business, and not necessarily a generic tool that is applied to a lot of different operations. But of course, if you were to section it, if you were to pull out the bookkeeping, that could be used for multiple businesses. If you were to pull out the scheduling, that could be used for different businesses. So it in part, but we tend not to use to build totally generic systems, and that's a good thing, because generic systems are most often either or both bloated to the user. There are too many fields that they don't actually use, and not enough fields that they would need, and then the data rot continues, and everything goes downhill, and everyone is frustrated, and the screens doesn't show the correct information for the use cases. So, but this is
Oh, sorry. The strength of our application is exactly that. It's that we are, despite being an older technology, our solutions to the business problems are better than our competition. And it's because we have an intimate knowledge of the problem space. And so our tools are very geared towards efficient day-to-day operations, like very efficient, and they're very, very tight. I call it the franchise model. We run, our system is designed to make a shop run like a franchise. So there's no general purpose stuff. It's all very specific to the type of work that's done. But what's cool about that is with model-driven development, that is a very reasonable use of the tools, because you can say, okay, I'm going to use a derived attribute to display this. I'm going to make a specific form that manages data input of maybe 6 different classes, but it's a task-specific piece of interface that makes sure the user does what they're supposed to do, only what they're supposed to do, and optimizes it in a way that they're not wasting time doing it. So, and the user is not an overly sophisticated user, right? We're talking about kind of a more blue-collar application. So you can't give, in fact, that was probably one of the biggest mistakes I made in the early versions of the system, was if it's too general, people get into trouble. But for example, one of the things I had to build was user permissions to delete things. Because back in the past, everybody could delete anything. That was a very bad idea. And so that's what we're doing. It's really pretty exciting. It's been a long haul. I should have moved out of ECO back when Capable Objects was around, and that's my bad for not doing that. And so I'm catching up, right? Because ECO 3 is pretty old. But thankfully, I really think that, and this, maybe long-term would be a good use case describing how, GIST modernity and fashion, how GIST can survive into the future, because truthfully, this GIST has no business doing that. And if it wasn't for ECO 3, it wouldn't have.
Yeah, that's a very good example of long-lived models, and how
Yes.
models have thus greater value than code, because well, code has changed a lot more than gist.
Yes. And also, it's going to be a much more pliable code base, because in ECO3, ECO3 is pretty brittle, especially with a model my size. It crashes all the time. And when you're generating stuff, I'm constantly overwriting what was generated and fixing things. And so what should be like, say you're going to add a couple of attributes to, especially if they're persisted attributes to a class, that's a tall order. You have to do it carefully. You have to have backups. You have to make sure that it actually worked. You got to evolve the database, blah, 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 blah. It's not as fast as it should, as MDriven is. You just add an attribute, you're done. Well, in ECO3, you're backing up, you're double checking things. It's a lot of work that way, and it's gotten worse just because it's aged, and the model's gotten bigger and bigger.
Yeah, and
What I'm just trying to remember what the memory lane here. But what is the designer? What the UML designer back then? What was that?
Well, it's in Borland. I don't know. I think
it
it's
was the model maker. It was some guys from St. Petersburg that was licensed or bought by Borland.
Okay.
And it was probably a fair shot at doing a modeling surface, but as I remembered, it was extremely brittle, and it broke all the time and crashed all the IDE. And I tried to use that on a project, one of my first uses of ECO or ECO as we call it, and it was I really remember what you say there, Damien, that make a copy of everything because I'm going to push this button and I don't know what's going to happen.
Yeah, all the time.
Yeah.
Okay.
All the time. And the downside of ECO3 and the WinForms world is that it's not, there's no view models, right?
Yeah.
It's not designed to be a disconnected transactional-based distributed system. It's server-based. And that turned out to be a much bigger problem than I realized, because if you gave users, direct exposure to persisted attributes, you had to be really careful with that. And what was actually even more interesting is the way the persistence mappers worked. Changes that were mid, when you say a user was typing in a note, right? That note would start to show up in other users' interfaces before it was complete. And so that would cause all kinds of strange behaviors, especially if that person then changed it at the same time. And so doing it more transactional, I do it with transient classes. So I build a transient class that's a sandbox, and you do all your work in that, and you hit go, and then I distribute it. That's really the same concept as a view mod.
Mm.
Yeah.
I've forgotten a lot of things that I once knew. I was struggling with. Yeah.
I'm hoping to forget them.
Yeah.
And
All right.
we will take on another client that we have signed with just today, doing much of the same job, lifting an older ecosystem to newer technology in order to gain speed when adding new features and improving maintainability. So we're gonna do that, me and Dennis.
No, it'd be exciting. I'm be happy to be resourced. It's been a fun journey.
Yeah, good. I can just mention that there's, except these videos on the Wednesdays videos, I did another one for describing certificates that we now can manage within in a model pattern. and it could be good to look up that if you want to do things with certificate or login with keys. If you want to if you want to build a what do you call it when you're the provider of identities, an identity provider, I guess. So that will be a use case for this. Create your own certificates and produce tokens for SAML or for GVTS in order to sort of hand over tokens to other systems, and you can build those systems as well. So you could make a whole swarm of MDriven systems that sort of share authentication. So they trust each other, and you can send over the token and trust that the user that was identified by one of the systems is okay as a user in another system. So I think we're going to use this stuff to synchronize our portal with a few other things. And as I talk about it now, I think we should do a sort of plug-in to WordPress to make it easy for having a WordPress site, logging into a WordPress site, and make that use an MDriven site, because that's a common use case, that you use WordPress or something like that to do pages with text, and then you need something to do application logic to get structured information going. And the mix between these two is always hard, because one tool is really good at one thing and the other tool is really good at the other thing, but you really need to make these tools to fly information so that the user perceives only one tool. But that's for future thinking. Very good. Thank you for showing up this time, and we will publish this video, and we'll see each other in 2 weeks.
Yes. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Thanks.
Yeah, thank
Bye-bye.
you.
Bye.
Bye-bye.